Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hingham Happenings. I'm your host, Christina Aiello. Let's take a look at what's coming up on this month's episode. A beautiful exhibition of watercolor paintings are put on display at South Street Gallery. A local advisor informs the community about Social Security. Author Dick Lair talks about his new book, Birth of a Nation, at the Hingham Public Library. Due to the recent snowfall, the roof of the historical Lincoln Building in Hingham Square collapses. Sergeant Stephen Dirth of the Hingham Police films a PSA on how to accurately pull over for emergency vehicles in the snow. A Hingham Elementary School roof succumbs to the pressure of the snow. South Street Gallery exhibits a beautiful display of watercolor paintings by Quincy artist Mary A. Smith.
Today we have an exhibition of watercolor paintings by Mary Smith from Quincy.
This gallery is showing a series of paintings that I've done over the last 5 years or so. Some of them are travel paintings. I paint when I go to Europe or just other places, not around where I live. And then some of them are in my neighborhood. Some of them are across the street from my house. Some of them are from photographs. So it's a mixture of things. I've been painting since I was 5 years old. I started out using pencils with a board in my bed. When I was 5, I was supposed to be taking a nap. But I got into painting probably 5 or 6 years old, and I've been studying it off and on my whole life. And I think my medium now is 90% watercolor, although I've done pastel, and I am interested in doing more pastel.
They will be on display until the last day of February. It's our February exhibition. I would say about once a month we change the exhibitions, but that's the front of the gallery. The second half shows paintings by many other different artists that we represent. So the front of the gallery changes frequently. I would say about once a month.
I think every artist thinks their paintings are unique. I think every artist, and I'm speaking about all of us, not just me, when we paint something, we're drawn to it. And when we see something that we want to paint, we want to be able to express our translation of what we see with the hopes that people, when they looked at it, would see something that they wouldn't normally recognize. They might walk past something, they might never see it. And they'll see a painting and they'll go, oh, I know where that is. Oh, I never saw it that time of day, or I never thought of it that way. And I also think that paintings are a form of handwriting, and that's why we sometimes can recognize painters no matter what they paint. You can see their own personal style show through. Sometimes I'm traveling, I always draw. Sometimes I paint plein air, which is what a lot of these paintings, other people's paintings and mine, meaning we paint outside, we sit outside, we paint outside. Sometimes I'll take a photograph and draw, and then I'll paint in my studio. And the difference is the plein air paintings are quicker, just a quick response to a location, where a studio painting is more thought out. They're different, but I think the effect is the same. You're trying to convey a sense of having seen something that maybe other people haven't noticed.
South Street Gallery is a fine art gallery that offers fine art and picture framing. And it's been here exactly for 13 years. It opened in winter of 2002. We are unique because I don't think there is a gallery like us on the South Shore of Boston. And in general, I would say there's a handful of them like this in New England. We concentrate on plein air painting and plein air painters, which means artists that go out there to the location and paint on the spot out in nature. So I think that's the unique reason, and we don't represent only local artists, but in general New England. When it opened in winter of 2002, it was half gallery and half Hingham upholstery. This building was the home of an upholstery business for over 40 years. So many people do know this place as that business. So the owners decided to open an art gallery because it was their hobby to paint and to showcase paintings of their artists' friends. But the Hingham upholstery business slowly slowed down. And I would say 2 years after South Street Gallery opened, Hingham Upholstery closed.
I think it's really important to me for people to look at the work, maybe have a personal response to it, maybe have a feeling that I have when I go and I look at work and I think, oh, now that I've seen this, I'll never look at this the same way again. And I think one of the paintings that makes me think that way is one is called Lobster's a Specialty, which I think is a kind of an odd one. And it's a painting of a Coke machine in the middle of a parking lot. And it was very iconic to me. It was very mesmerizing. I saw it, it was dusk, and everything else was dark, and the Coke machine was glowing, and the asphalt was pink, and I thought, oh, I have to do this. So that's in the show, and I think that's something that everybody else would just walk past.
Don't be scared to come in and look around. I won't ask questions that will intimidate people. The doors are always open.
During the month of March, South Street Gallery will display the work of Diane Panarelli Miller. The public will have a chance to meet Diane either at her painting demonstration on Saturday, March 14th, or at the closing reception on Friday evening, March 27th, from 6 to 9 p.m. Please visit southstreetgallery.com for more information. Executive Director of Global View Capital Advisors, Kelly Shanahan, holds a public education workshop on Social Security at the Hingham Public Library.
I do public education workshops on Social Security income benefits because I found through helping people with their retirement planning that not only are people uninformed, but they are misinformed by public entities. I give them all their choices, or I try and lay out the choices that they have because every individual has 9 different choices. Any individual who qualifies for Social Security benefits has 9 different choices, and even people who don't qualify may qualify for spousal benefits from the person they were married to or are still married to. Social Security is one of your only retirement assets that has a cost of living adjustment for the rest of your life. So you get a certain amount of income, and that's going to grow as you age. Secondly, from 62 to your full retirement age, for folks it can be anywhere from currently 65 to 67, that income grows just under 7% from 62 to full retirement age. From full retirement age to age 70, that's guaranteed to grow just under 8%. So while retirement assets get promised to grow or are thought to grow, Social Security is guaranteed to grow just under 7% from 62 to full retirement age, and then just under 8% through to age 70. Well, Social Security is a reflection of your earnings and how much you put into the pot, so to speak. So although if you're a public employee, you're going to be putting into a public pension, so you are not going to be eligible for Social Security unless you had a private position. It'll be diminished. But for most of us, the majority of the population, Social Security is, you see it coming out of your paycheck every week. So that is going to be part of your future retirement assets, and that's why it's so important. An additional note on that, because I've noticed this working with people for self-employed people, you need to be aware that you're putting, as you pay your self-employed tax, so to speak, your whole goal shouldn't be to minimize your net income, but to have a net income but also be contributing to that future of your Social Security. So we have that growth guaranteed, and on top of that, it's been proven statistically, and it's not so much for retirees today, but for retirees of the future, the probability that you can replace your income with other retirement assets other than Social Security because they lack those qualities of guaranteed growth and cost of living adjustment just isn't there, and it's diminished as we grow through time. So that's why it's so important. Probably For this location, probably we will do it sometime in the summer or early summer. We try to do it every 6 months or quarterly. I'm going to be down at Pine Hills in, let's see, in April. I'm going to be doing it at Signature Healthcare on May 27th, I believe, over in Brockton. And I do it for clubs, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, things like that. So they're usually published in the paper, and people can find out about them that way. Or by calling me, they could find out if I have any engagements. I come to a Social Security workshop. I have found, and read, I guess, Social Security just, and this is when at the beginning when I said misinformed, you can ask the right question. It's been my experience, it's been my client's experience, and this is why I do this, because when you go to Social Security, you may not get the right answer. And unless you know absolutely the right question to ask, you may not get the right information you need to make a well-informed decision. Just that people really need to make a thoughtful decision, because this is income for the rest of your life, and it's one of the most important retirement assets. So really know the facts so you can make an informed decision.
Dick Lair gives a talk on his new book, Birth of a Nation, which tells the story of how a legendary filmmaker and a crusading editor reignited America's Civil War.
Pleasure to have a chance to talk to you tonight about a largely forgotten civil rights leader and newspaper editor by the name of William Monroe Trotter, and made a quick reference to him, and to talk about his role in the civil rights protests against the famous film, The Birth of a Nation, that was made by the director D.W. Griffith. The Birth of a Nation is the name of D.W. Griffith's legendary film from 1915. So they wanted that in the title, and the subtitle captures the fact that this is a story about Griffith and his new film, and the reaction and challenge he received from a civil rights leader, Monroe Trotter. So it's an attempt to get at all that. I got a chance to talk about the story, the narrative history that I describe in the book, which is this titanic clash between Trotter, the newspaper editor, in his bid to attack and challenge this film, The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith, which is considered America's first blockbuster film, and is widely known as the starting point of American film history for its artistry and filmmaking technique. But, and there's a big but, its racist portrayal of black Americans is deeply offensive.
What inspired you to write this book?
I think it was the newspaper editor, William Monroe Trotter, who was a Boston-based civil rights leader, and in his time a radical in terms of his civil rights strategy for equal rights for black Americans.
The beloved and historical Lincoln Building, located in Hingham Square, was torn down after excessive amounts of snowfall caused the roof to collapse.
Massachusetts has suffered tremendously from these sudden blizzards that have hit the East Coast. The town of Hingham has felt the impact on local businesses and residential areas. Specifically, the Lincoln Building in the square has suffered some serious damage from the elements this past week. Excessive amounts of snowfall had brought the building to its final chapter. Hingham Fire and Police stations were working hard with the town to assess the damages and demolition of the Lincoln building. The town is working diligently to finish and clean up. Local businesses are still up and running, and residents are not letting the storm impact their daily lives. With more on the way, they're trying to stay ahead of the storm by relentless hours of shoveling. With all this snowfall, one might ask, where is it all going? The parking lot of the Hingham Bathing Beach is accumulating mountains of snow. With town workers trying to stay on top of it, the mound seems to keep getting larger. Barnes Wharf really felt the cold with a sheet of ice covering Bathing Beach. While residents are surely looking forward to some warmer weather, it seems unlikely to happen anytime soon. This may seem natural for New England weather, but this is historically the most snowfall we've had in decades.
Sergeant Stephen Dirth gives us some important tips and reminders for driving safely in the snow. Most importantly, how to correctly pull over for emergency vehicles with the snow occupying our streets.
My name is Stephen Dirth. I'm a sergeant with the Hingham Police, and I'm the public information officer. So I'd like to talk about what to do when an emergency vehicle approaches you, whether it's a police, fire, or an ambulance. An emergency vehicle with the lights or siren on. In Massachusetts, what you're required to do is pull to the right and stop, fully stop. And that applies to whether the vehicle is coming towards you or approaching you from behind. What's important to do is first of all, is to see the vehicle coming up behind you or approaching you from front on, and pull to the right. And now, as far as you can, and stop. So when the vehicle passes by you, don't start pulling out back into traffic until it fully passes by you. And that's important, because some people will think a fire truck starts to go by them and misjudge the length of the truck, they start to pull out and then we have a collision. So you always want to look out for that. The other thing you want to look out for is, well, some people won't fully stop, they'll slow down, and that's important. We see many times people aren't fully stopping, they're crawling, they're reducing their speed, but if they pull to the right and stop in compliance with the law, that allows us to get past them, especially when we're going into the oncoming lane safely to pass them. If they're moving ahead, now we continue in the oncoming lane, creating a hazard. So we also have to watch out for if you don't fully stop, we have to turn right sometimes, whether it's into a driveway or a road. And if we're trying to turn right in front of you and you're continuing along, we're going to have a collision. The other thing is something to think of. It isn't covered in the law, but many times you'll see more than one emergency vehicle approaching. So what you want to watch out for is, if you see a fire truck, expect that there's going to be another one, or expect that there might be an ambulance. If you see a police car, expect that there may be another one coming up behind it. As emergency responders, we try to keep a distance between them, obviously a safe distance, so that you'll be able to see the other vehicle coming behind you, and that's important. So just to be fully alert, of course, look in your mirrors, and you should be able to see it and hear it coming. We've had a record amount of snow over the last 10 days in the area here, almost 40 inches. So where to put it? It's along the side of the road, and that cuts down on where you can pull off the road. The law doesn't say you have to pull off the road. Law says pull to the right as far as possible and stop. So with the snowbank, it's hard to pull off to the right as much as you could without the snow. So when you pull to the right as far as you can, that's important because we have oncoming traffic coming towards us too. So that's why you need to have the oncoming traffic that are approaching, and that's covered under the law, both directions, whether it's behind you or in towards you. Just pull to the right and stop.
With the tremendous amount of snowfall in New England, many buildings have felt the pressure. Ray Estes, chair of the Hingham School Committee, speaks about the recent collapse of the Plymouth River School roof and the work being done to rebuild.
We're here at Plymouth River School in front of the gingerbread display because we're dealing with a little snow issue. It's wintertime in Hingham, and as folks are fully aware, we've been dealing with record snowfalls recently. And as a result of the accumulating snow over the past 4 or so weeks, we've encountered a structural issue in a portion of the building here at PRS that we discovered yesterday early afternoon and are addressing today. What began yesterday is when this issue, we became aware of this issue, and I learned about it and the other school committee members learned about it yesterday afternoon. There were a number of ceiling tiles which fell down in the library. There's also a small area in the main office and a small area in an adjacent hallway. After that occurred, the school administration was notified, the building commissioner was called and came over here to assess what was going on. Luckily, it's school vacation week, so the kids aren't here. There was, I think, Chuck Cormier, the principal, and a couple of secretaries who were in the building at the time. They were asked to leave, and we immediately engaged some engineers to come over and start to assess the situation. Essentially, there is some small areas of the steel structure that have been compromised by the weight of some of the snow. Some of the footage you'll show, particularly in the library, shows the ceiling well opened up and sagging considerably. That was done by folks to get at really where the damage is and to get a sense of what the damage is and assess it from an engineering standpoint. So my primary goal for talking to you now and getting this message out to folks in the community is so that folks aren't alarmed and that they get the accurate information. When this story broke yesterday, there was a release sent out to the press by a media consultant who didn't talk to the school department or myself ahead of time, and there was some unfortunate language used which characterized the situation as a collapse. And as we all know, you have a mental picture of what collapse means, particularly in the wake of the Lincoln building last week or so. So we wanted folks to understand that we're not talking about a cave-in or a major collapse of Plymouth River, but rather some limited, discrete areas of structural compromise, if you will, that we're addressing from an engineering standpoint and also from a manpower standpoint in removing the snow from the roof. The primary concern moving forward is the safety of the kids and the staff in this building, right? If we weren't fully prepared to open this building knowing that it was safe and having engineers and the building commissioner and the fire department certify that it was safe, then we certainly wouldn't do so. So our efforts this weekend are going to be geared toward that goal, making sure that we do the work necessary to get the snow off the roof, to shore up those areas of structural compromise, and make sure that we have a safe building to welcome kids back after the break. Students should know the facts, right? I think that, I have 2 kids that go here to Plymouth River. I have 2 other kids at the middle school who went through here at PRS, so I'm well ensconced in the PRS community. But the kids here should know that, one, if they're here, it's because it's safe to be here. Certainly we have a full-time adjustment counselor, A.C. Decker, on staff here who will be available to meet with kids as necessary if there's any concern or uneasiness about being here based on the reports. But again, we wanted to make sure we got out accurate information so that there wasn't, a misunderstanding at all. Folks weren't jumping to conclusions, and the kids could come back and feel safe and know that they weren't, walking into an unsafe situation. Of course, as Doc Ellis says in all of her messages about snow closures and everything else, the ultimate decision lies with parents. If parents don't feel comfortable sending their kids to school, that's obviously their decision. Of course, as professionals, I'm an elected official, we have educators, we have engineers, we have building commissioner, fire, all of those folks. If we weren't all in agreement that this building was perfectly safe and ready for operation to welcome those kids back, it wouldn't be open for them. So we hope that the kids will come back, will understand the seriousness of the issue and what's happened, but be patient while we're under construction and things don't look quite as cheerful as perhaps they do otherwise. Know that we'll restore regular operation as soon as we possibly can. Steps have already been taken to cover up the shelves and the books in the library to make sure that the collection isn't damaged. But folks should know that if they're here, it's because we're safe. Ultimately, it's a parent's decision. Whether it's a significant snowstorm or it's a situation like we're facing here, But ultimately, it's a parent's decision whether or not they feel comfortable sending their kids back to school. But as I said, I think that we're taking every step necessary. We're being, cautious in our approach. We're making sure that, engineers are involved every step of the way. We're consulting with the building commissioner. We're in regular contact with the town administrator and the selectmen. I talked to both of them several times already today. Coordinating our efforts with the DPW here in town. Folks need to remember that this is one town, and we're a portion of it. And this is, a serious situation that the entire town is working toward. This is one of our 4 elementary schools. There are about 500 kids that go here. That's about 1/4 of our elementary school population, so it's significant. We need to make sure that we continue to work together in a collaborative way to get through this, just like any other, setback that we face here in Hingham. So if you take a look at this, you get this shot. So you can see there are two beams, one on top of the other, and in between the steel beams are triangular steel structures that are support structures. And if you can see by my poor drawing, the ones toward the end here are bent and not really taking the triangular shape any longer. So that's essentially what has occurred in a few different areas of the underlying structure. So what we're talking about is, if folks know the terminology, we're talking about a drop ceiling, right? So we've got a drop ceiling that is attached by a metal structure, and then there's kind of open space in between there. And I think you may have gotten a shot of some insulation that came out of that open space in between the drop ceiling and the roof structure itself. So this steel structure that I just showed and described is in between that drop ceiling where the tiles fell down and the roof that actually goes out to the sky. Just to reiterate, at no time was there any breach. There was no snow that came down. We're not talking about a collapse or a cave-in. Nothing. There's no snow in the library. There's no snow in the main office. Nothing in the hallway. But we are talking about, a structural integrity concern that's being addressed. I'd just like to thank the crews here. I'd like to thank John Ferris, our Director of Building and Support Services. I'd like to thank Paul Field, who heads up our building and grounds for the district. Katie Hartman, the Supervisor of Custodians. Barry Steen from the high school. Larry Babcock from the high school. All the custodians who've really been put to work here. We've hired crews from out of town to come in and get snow off the roofs as well. I'd like to thank Ted Alexiadis and Betty Foley, the town administrator, and his assistant. I'd like to thank the selectmen for their efforts to help us with getting the resources that we needed to address this quickly. DPW, the large equipment that they sent over, I'm very appreciative of that. Mike Clancy, the building commissioner, police and fire who've been responsive as necessary. Really all the folks in town who have come together to address this concern. It really says something about Hingham and what we're made of. Folks live in this town, they come together, they work together, they enjoy things together. People move to this town because of the schools, and here we have a little bit of a situation with one of our schools that we need to address, and all hands on deck and everybody stepping up, and it's really heartening to see, and I'm grateful for it.
That's all for this month. Tune in next time for another exciting episode of Hingham Happenings. If you have any suggestions for a future episode, please email us at hinghamhappenings@hinghammedia.org. Thanks so much for watching.